The vast expanse of space was silent, except for the soft hum of the human space station, Horizon 1. It hovered on the edge of the Orion sector, a place where humans traded with other species and gathered intelligence about distant civilizations. For many visiting aliens, it was nothing special. A small station, primitive by most advanced standards. But to Captain Elias Carter, it was home. He walked along the observation deck, his eyes fixed on the stars. The hum of machinery, the soft beeps of communication consoles, and the occasional chatter of crew members created a rhythm he had long grown accustomed to. Yet today was different. A shuttle approached the station, sleek and polished, unlike anything human engineers could construct. It shimmered with a metallic violet hue that seemed alive, reflecting distant starlight in sharp, dazzling angles. The onboard sensors identified it as a Vortan vessel, a diplomatic ship from the Vortan Empire. Known throughout the sector for their technological supremacy, the Vortans were proud, arrogant, and, according to many, nearly untouchable. The shuttle docked, and a single figure emerged. Zira, the Vortan diplomat, glided into the station with an elegance that humans could never replicate. Her eyes, bright and calculating, scanned the surroundings with a mix of amusement and disdain. "Humans," she said, her voice melodic but sharp, echoing slightly in the metal corridor. "So this is what you call a station? How quaint, how fragile." Elias stood tall, his uniform crisp, but he didn't reply immediately. He had learned long ago that the Vortans thrived on insult. If you reacted with anger, they would press harder. Calm observation, however, often unnerved them. Zira moved closer, her gaze falling on a nearby maintenance robot. "Even your machines are inefficient. How do you survive with such rudimentary systems?" A junior engineer shifted nervously beside Elias. Zira's sharp tone was intimidating, but Elias placed a reassuring hand on the engineer's shoulder. "Zira, welcome to Horizon 1. I'm Captain Elias Carter. Let's show our guest the station before she starts drawing harsh conclusions." Zira raised an eyebrow, a small smirk playing on her lips. "Show me? Why? I've already seen enough. Humans, so slow, so unpredictable. Your machines, your minds, so limited. How amusing." Elias kept his calm demeanor. "You may be surprised. There's more to humans than what you can see at first glance." "Ha!" Zira laughed, a sound that seemed almost musical, yet it carried a cutting edge. "I am not surprised by anything this primitive species could offer. You are lucky I even consider visiting. The Vortan Empire rarely wastes time on children playing at intelligence." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Elias, however, didn't flinch. "We'll see about that," he said quietly. They began the tour. Zira floated through the corridors, her limbs moving with alien grace. She examined the human equipment with a critical eye. Consoles, propulsion units, life support systems. Everything was scrutinized, measured, and dismissed. "This," she said, pointing to a propulsion core, "is your fastest engine? I've seen Vortan cores 10 times smaller generate 50 times the output. And you call this advanced?" Elias smiled faintly. "It may not look impressive, but our systems are adaptable. They survive conditions even the Vortans would struggle with." Zira laughed again. "Adaptable? Oh, please. Adaptability is a weakness. Weak species scramble when they face a challenge. Strength is in precision, in perfect execution." Elias studied her, curious. Her pride was almost tangible, a living thing that filled the room. He wondered if she would ever see what humans could do when pushed to their limits. The tour continued to the engineering bay. Here, human engineers worked on repairs and modifications, their hands moving quickly over tools and circuits. Zira observed their methods, her eyes narrowing. "You solder by hand?" she asked, incredulous. No automated assembly? No precision algorithms? You waste time with such clumsy methods? How can you even hope to compete? A young engineer, trembling slightly under her gaze, replied, Our methods allow for flexibility. We can repair, modify, or innovate on the spot. Sometimes machines fail in ways no algorithm predicts. Zyra tilted her head. Predictability is security. Chaos is death. Elias stepped forward. You may be right. Chaos is dangerous. But humans, we don't just survive it. We adapt to it. Sometimes even thrive in it. Zyra scoffed. Thrive? That's a naive way to survive. Survival is boring if you cannot conquer. You cannot conquer, and yet you imagine you thrive? How amusing. Elias remained silent, letting her arrogance fill the air. He wanted her to underestimate humans, just a little. The tour ended at the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly in every direction, their beauty silent and impartial. Zyra looked out at them, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she turned back to Elias. Tell me, human, she said, her voice smooth but sharp. Do you really believe your species is anything more than weak creatures pretending to be strong? Elias met her gaze steadily. We may be weaker in some ways, but our strength is different. It is not in size, speed, or raw power. It is in intelligence, creativity, and the ability to adapt. That is something no alien technology, no matter how advanced, can fully predict. Zyra laughed again, a high, clear sound. Empty words, flattery. You are amusing, human. Perhaps I shall watch your species for entertainment. For now. Her words stung, but Elias didn't let it show. Instead, he nodded, almost politely. Then I hope you enjoy observing. You may find we are more surprising than you expect. Zyra's smirk widened. Oh, I expect nothing. I only see weakness. That is enough. As Zyra prepared to leave the observation deck, Elias's communicator beeped. The message was urgent. Sensors had detected a spatial anomaly near the edge of the Orion sector, something that no Vorton or human ship had ever encountered before. Elias turned to Zyra. You may find the universe has surprises in store, perhaps some that even your calculations cannot predict. Zyra arched an eyebrow. Do you dare challenge me, human? Elias shook his head. Not challenge, just observe. That is all. Sometimes observation is enough to learn who truly survives. Zyra paused, her alien eyes narrowing. There was a faint spark of curiosity, or was it irritation, behind her confident facade. She turned and walked back to her shuttle, leaving the humans behind, their minds calm but alert, already preparing for the next move. As the Vortan shuttle departed, Elias reflected on the encounter. Zyra's arrogance was not dangerous in itself. Her underestimation of humans was. But humans had something no Vortan system could measure. Ingenuity born from Earth's origin, adaptability honed over millennia, and the ability to turn what seemed like weaknesses into strengths. Somewhere deep in space, the stars twinkled silently, and as the station hummed with life and preparation, Elias knew that the real test was coming. Zyra had ridiculed humanity, laughed at their flaws, and dismissed their potential, but she had not yet seen the true power of a species shaped by unpredictability and boundless creativity. In the quiet hum of Horizon 1, humans prepared, not for war, but for the moment when the universe itself would remind arrogant visitors that strength does not always come in predictable forms. And somewhere in the Vortan Empire, Zyra would soon learn that underestimating humans was a mistake no diplomat could afford to make. Days passed since Zyra's arrival at Horizon 1. The station's crew moved through routines with heightened alertness. Zyra's words and her condescending gaze still lingered in their minds, But Captain Elias Carter remained calm. He knew that alien arrogance was predictable. It often led to mistakes, especially when someone underestimated humans. Zira, meanwhile, prepared a demonstration she called a test of superiority. She announced to the human command, "Tomorrow, you will witness the full power of Vortan technology. Perhaps it will amuse me to see how weak species attempt to respond." The announcement sent a ripple through the crew. Some were anxious, others curious. Elias, however, saw opportunity. This test was not just a display of alien might, it was a chance to show Zira something she could never fully understand. The next day, the station's main docking bay was transformed into a testing ground. Vortan ships hovered in formation, their hulls gleaming under artificial lights. Energy shields shimmered across their surfaces, and weapon systems hummed with a quiet menace. Zira herself floated in the center, radiating confidence. "Observe," she said, her voice carrying easily across the bay. "This is true power, efficiency, precision. Humans do not even try to interfere. You will fail." Elias stood before the group of humans, calm as always. "Remember," he said quietly, "weakness is not what it seems. Adaptability is strength. Keep your focus." The demonstration began. Vortan drones moved with perfect precision, firing at targets with uncanny accuracy. Shields resisted impact, weapons recalculated trajectories faster than any human eye could follow. Zira floated above, eyes gleaming with smug satisfaction. "See?" she said, gesturing toward the drones. "Your species cannot hope to match this. You are slow, inefficient, and predictable." Yet Elias watched closely, observing how the drones adjusted to each other's movements. The patterns were flawless, almost too perfect. There was little flexibility, little room for improvisation. That, he knew, was the key. When the first wave of drones completed their demonstration, Elias nodded to his engineering team. They began activating a human system that had been quietly integrated into the station's grid, a system designed not for raw power but for adaptability. Elias called it the Earth Origin Protocol. At first, nothing seemed different. Zira laughed, floating easily among her drones. "Do you see? Nothing you do can change what is already perfect." But as the second wave of Vortan drones moved into formation, subtle errors began to appear. A shield fluctuated for a fraction of a second, barely noticeable to the untrained eye. A laser misaligned by a millimeter. A drone hesitated for just a moment before correcting its trajectory. Zira's eyes narrowed. "Impossible. My calculations. They should be perfect." "What is happening?" Elias stepped forward, calmly observing the drones. "Sometimes perfection can be too rigid. Small changes, subtle adjustments, humans have learned to use them to their advantage." Zira's voice rose, tinged with disbelief. "Adjustments? You cannot change my systems. They are flawless." Elias smiled faintly. "Flawless does not mean unstoppable. Flexibility, creativity, adaptability, these are strengths humans develop every day. We respond, we improvise, and we learn from every unexpected variable. Even your perfect systems can falter when faced with unpredictability." Zira hovered in place, her pride shaken. She attempted to regain control, issuing commands with sharp, precise gestures. But the human protocol continued to subtly interfere. Energy flows fluctuated in ways her AI could not immediately compensate for. Drones miscalculated when environmental conditions changed by the tiniest margin. Shields shifted inconsistently, and weapons misfired, not catastrophically, but enough to show the humans could disrupt her control. "This cannot be," Zira said, her voice unusually quiet. "How can humans interfere?" Elias's eyes met hers. "Because we are unpredictable. You rely on calculations, logic, and perfection. Humans rely on something else, something your systems cannot measure. Creativity, improvisation, intuition. We adapt to challenges rather than attempting to control everything perfectly. Zira's irritation grew. She signaled for more drones, expecting that increased numbers would overwhelm the humans. The new wave appeared, faster and larger than before. She floated confidently among them, certain that the demonstration would conclude with her victory. But humans moved differently this time. Engineers guided drones in subtle ways, creating patterns of interference that exploited Zira's overconfidence. Pilots adjusted trajectories mid-flight, improvising responses to Vortan maneuvers. Even the station's defense systems, normally considered weak, activated unexpected redundancies that disrupted the drone's coordination. Zira's smirk faltered. "Stop this!" she demanded. "Your systems cannot... This is impossible!" Elias remained calm, guiding his team. "Do not fear them," he said quietly. "Fear does not help. Observe, adapt, respond. That is all humans do, and that is why we endure." As the demonstration continued, Zira's advanced technology struggled against human ingenuity. What should have been a straightforward display of superiority turned into a test of human creativity. Subtle disruptions, clever adjustments, and improvisation caused the Vortan drones to falter repeatedly. Each minor error compounded, revealing the limits of rigid perfection. Zira floated, eyes wide, struggling to maintain composure. How are you doing this? My calculations, my systems, everything should function flawlessly." Elias spoke, calm and deliberate. "Your systems are excellent for predictability, but humans are not predictable. That is the difference. We learn from chaos, we turn weakness into strength, and we do not rely solely on numbers or algorithms. That is why your perfection fails against us." The tension in the docking bay was palpable. Crew members, once nervous, now watched with quiet pride as their systems outmaneuvered Zira's drones. The Vortan diplomat, who had mocked them relentlessly just days before, was beginning to realize that humans were not so easily dismissed. Zira attempted one final display, a synchronized attack of all remaining drones, moving with breathtaking speed and precision. She expected immediate submission, a clear demonstration of Vortan superiority. Elias calmly activated the final stage of the Earth Origin Protocol. Human systems adapted in real time, creating patterns that no pre-programmed algorithm could predict. Drones misfired, shields fluctuated, and Zira's AI struggled to respond. Even with her skill and authority, she could not regain control. For the first time, Zira felt doubt. Her confidence wavered, replaced by a strange mixture of irritation and curiosity. "Impossible," she whispered. "Humans? How?" Elias stepped closer, his gaze steady. "Because we are not just machines. We are more than predictable patterns. Earth taught us to survive, to adapt, to create solutions where none seem possible. That is what you are seeing, and that is why your ridicule was misplaced." The demonstration ended quietly, with the Vortan drones retreating to their ship, systems partially disrupted, leaving Zira hovering in stunned silence. Crew members exchanged glances, their earlier anxiety replaced by quiet satisfaction. Humans had held their ground. They had turned a demonstration of alien superiority into a subtle lesson in ingenuity. Zira's pride, once unshakable, was now tempered with an uneasy awareness. She floated near the exit of the docking bay, observing the humans more closely than before. The subtle intelligence she had dismissed as primitive had revealed itself in ways her calculations could not comprehend. Elias approached, still calm. "You see now, Zira, humans are not just what you first perceive. We endure, adapt, and overcome in ways no algorithm predicts. Ridicule may be easy, but understanding, that is far more difficult." Zyra's eyes narrowed, and she floated silently for a moment. Then finally she spoke, her voice lower, less certain. "Perhaps I underestimated you, human. Perhaps I did." Elias nodded. "It is easy to underestimate what you cannot measure. But some things, creativity, resilience, adaptability, cannot be measured. They can only be observed." The docking bay grew quiet, the hum of the station returning to its usual rhythm. Zyra remained silent for a moment, contemplating the lesson she had just received. Elias turned to his crew, smiling faintly. Today was not a victory of power. It was a victory of intelligence, observation, and adaptability. Remember that. That is the strength of humanity. That is what Zyra and any who underestimate us must learn. Zyra, floating back to her shuttle, finally gave a small nod. Not out of respect, but acknowledgement. She had witnessed something she could not fully explain. Humans, weak in appearance, could manipulate situations, turn weaknesses into strength, and challenge even the most advanced systems. As the shuttle departed, Elias reflected silently. Zyra's arrogance had provided the humans an opportunity to demonstrate their true capabilities. The real test, he knew, was just beginning. The universe had a way of challenging species, and humans were ready, armed not just with technology, but with the adaptability and intelligence born from Earth's origin. The stars outside twinkled endlessly, indifferent to alien pride or human determination. But inside Horizon 1, the crew prepared quietly, confident that they had shown Zyra a lesson she would not forget. Never underestimate the unexpected power of humanity. After the demonstration, the docking bay of Horizon 1 was quiet, the hum of machines filling the silence. Zyra hovered near the edge, still floating after the shuttle's departure, her violet eyes narrowed in thought. For the first time, the Vorton diplomat felt something she had never admitted: uncertainty. Her systems were powerful, her calculations precise. Yet the humans had disrupted them with nothing more than quick thinking and subtle adaptability. Every move she had made, every command issued, had been countered, not by brute force, but by ingenuity. Zyra frowned, recalling the calm composure of Captain Elias Carter. The human had spoken softly, almost humbly, yet his words carried weight. He had explained that humans thrived in unpredictability, adapted in ways her rigid systems could not foresee. She had laughed at the concept at first. Adaptability, creativity, a species that relied on improvisation, ridiculous. Yet now, standing alone in the docking bay, she could not deny it. Meanwhile, Elias returned to the observation deck, where crew members were reviewing the results of the demonstration. Data streamed across monitors, showing subtle fluctuations in the Vortan systems during the test. The patterns were minor, almost insignificant. But in a Vortan display of perfection, even a small error was monumental. "Captain," Lieutenant Mara said, pointing to the screens, "look at this. The drone's shields fluctuated exactly when our system introduced minor variances. They couldn't correct immediately. Even Zyra seemed unsure." Elias nodded. "Exactly. That's the point. It is not just about technology. It's about what the technology cannot predict. Humans have a natural edge there. Earth's origin gave us an ability to adapt, to improvise, to respond to chaos in ways that rigid systems cannot anticipate." Mara looked puzzled. "Earth's origin? You mean the planet?" Elias smiled faintly. "Yes. Earth's unpredictability shaped our species. Storms, volcanoes, environmental changes, life had to adapt or die. That adaptability became part of who we are. Our intelligence is not just logical, it is practical. We can survive challenges that no rigid system expects." Mara's eyes widened in understanding. "So Zyra, She underestimated us because she didn't account for that? Exactly, Elias said. She saw our technology and thought weakness. She saw our numbers and thought inefficiency. But what she did not see, what no system can measure, is human ingenuity. That is the true strength. Far away, Zyra sat in her ship, reviewing the data herself. The more she analyzed, the more impossible it seemed. Every drone had been disrupted, yet none had been destroyed. Every shield fluctuation, every misalignment was subtle, but cumulative. Her calculations had failed to predict a single one. Zyra muttered under her breath, a sound unfamiliar even to her own crew. How can such a species exist? Weak, primitive, yet effective? Her lieutenant, observing her, spoke cautiously. They are humans, Ambassador. They survive because they are unpredictable. Zyra's violet eyes narrowed. Unpredictable? Yes, that is part of it. But there is more. Something organic. Something originating from their home planet. Earth. Their planet gave them this. The word seemed to carry weight in the quiet chamber. Zyra realized she had underestimated the very foundation of their intelligence. It was not just the humans themselves. It was their origin, their roots. The planet they came from had shaped their instincts, their creativity, their resilience. Back on the station, Elias gathered the crew for a briefing. He wanted to ensure that everyone understood what had happened, not just as a victory, but as a lesson. Zyra believes that perfection is power, he said, pointing to the data on the screens. But perfection cannot account for unpredictability. Humans have learned to thrive in conditions that no system can predict. That is our advantage. That is why her technology faltered, not because we are stronger, but because we are flexible. Lieutenant Mara frowned. So what happens next, Captain? She'll try again, won't she? Perhaps, Elias said, but she will have to rethink her approach. She cannot dominate us with logic alone. She cannot rely on calculations. Our strength is not something that can be overridden by her systems. It comes from who we are, where we come from, and the creativity built into every human mind. Meanwhile, Zyra analyzed her own pride. She had always believed that superior technology and precise calculations ensured victory. Her species thrived on order, structure, and efficiency. Weakness, in her view, was chaos, something to be eliminated. Yet humans had demonstrated that chaos could be controlled, harnessed, and turned into advantage. She tapped her chin thoughtfully. They are unpredictable, she admitted, almost aloud. And yet they achieve results. They adapt faster than my systems can compensate. How? Why? Her lieutenant remained silent, knowing that the ambassador was grappling with a truth few Vortons could comprehend. Earth, Zyra muttered finally. It is Earth that shaped them. The origin of their species gives them... what? Resilience? Ingenuity? Intelligence that cannot be predicted? Her lieutenant nodded cautiously. That is correct, Ambassador. They have inherited adaptability from their home world. It is not just biology. It is instinct, strategy, and creativity combined. Zyra exhaled slowly. This realization was dangerous for her pride. To acknowledge that humans had an edge over Vortan logic was almost unthinkable. And yet the evidence was clear. Back at Horizon 1, the humans continued their work, unaware of Zyra's inner struggle. They were preparing for the next stage of engagement, subtly reinforcing their systems, ensuring that adaptability remained their greatest weapon. Elias watched them, pride rising quietly. Zyra's arrogance was her mistake, he said softly. She assumed weakness where there was strength, inefficiency where there was flexibility. That is why humans endure. That is why we survive. As night fell on the station, the stars reflected off the hull like scattered diamonds. The humans moved with quiet confidence, each aware that the Vortan diplomat had learned a lesson, even if she had not yet admitted it. In the silence of space, Zira reflected on the events of the day. Her calculations had been perfect, yet her expectations had failed. She had assumed superiority, yet humans had turned apparent weakness into advantage. She had ridiculed them, laughed at their imperfections, yet they had proven resilience, creativity, and adaptability beyond her system's comprehension. Zira floated near her command console, fingers hovering over controls she had once trusted implicitly. For the first time, doubt crept into her thoughts. Humans were not a species to dismiss. They were not merely primitive creatures clinging to survival. They were cunning, resourceful, and connected to something larger, their origin, their planet, their instinctive ability to thrive. A subtle realization dawned on her. She could dominate a species with rigid control, predictable behavior, and blind obedience. Humans had none of these weaknesses, and that made them dangerous, not because of strength, but because of the unknown. Her lieutenant looked at her cautiously. "Ambassador, are you reconsidering?" Zira's eyes glimmered with a mix of curiosity and irritation. "I am observing," she said carefully. "Observation is necessary. Humans, they cannot be ignored." Back on the station, Elias continued his quiet watch over the systems. The crew prepared for what might come next, reinforcing their strategies not just with technology, but with the human advantage of flexibility. They understood something their alien visitor could not yet accept. Earth origin intelligence was unpredictable, adaptive, and unstoppable when harnessed correctly. The revelation was clear. Strength was not always measured by size, speed, or raw power. True strength lay in creativity, adaptability, and the ability to turn challenges into opportunities. Zira had seen it firsthand, and though her pride would not allow her to admit it openly, the lesson had taken root. Humans, born from a planet of chaos, storms, and constant change, had an advantage no system could measure. And now, Zira would have to face a truth she had never anticipated. To underestimate humans was to underestimate Earth itself. As the stars stretched endlessly into the void, the quiet tension remained. Humans had revealed a glimpse of their true strength, and Zira, for all her arrogance, could no longer ignore it. The real battle, of understanding and respect, was only beginning. The calm of Horizon 1 hid a quiet tension. Captain Elias Carter moved through the station with purpose, reviewing systems, checking calculations, and watching his crew work with a quiet pride. The demonstration had shaken Zira, but she had not yet left. Her presence lingered, a reminder that arrogance could return in unexpected ways. Elias understood that the next step was crucial. The humans had proven they could withstand a show of Vortan superiority, but now it was time to show Zira and her drones that human ingenuity could take the initiative. "Prepare the counter-demonstration," Elias ordered. "We will not merely respond. We will anticipate, adapt, and innovate." Lieutenant Mara raised an eyebrow. "You mean a proactive approach? Won't Zira see it as a challenge?" Elias smiled faintly. "Good. Let her underestimate us again. Let her arrogance blind her. That is the advantage humans have always had. We thrive when others think they control the situation." In the docking bay, engineers and pilots worked together to reconfigure human drones and defensive systems. Unlike the Vortan drones, which relied on rigid calculations and preset commands, the human systems were designed for adaptation. They could respond to environmental changes, adjust in real time, and even learn from subtle variations in enemy patterns. Zira observed from her shuttle's viewport, confident at first. "Humans will attempt something," she said to her lieutenant. But it will fail. They cannot match Vortan precision. Her lieutenant remained cautious. Ambassador, they have already shown flexibility. Zira waved the comment away. Flexibility is only good if it matches speed. Speed and power are the true measures of superiority. We shall see who is correct. The demonstration began. Humans initiated a series of movements that appeared simple at first glance. Drones moved in coordinated sweeps, life support systems adjusted environmental energy flows, and stations' defensive grids subtly shifted power to areas most likely to encounter interference. Zira's drones advanced, weapons ready, shields activated, expecting an easy victory. But human drones moved unpredictably, weaving between Vortan formations and patterns that no calculation could predict. Energy shields flared at precise moments, redirecting attacks harmlessly, while weapons recalculated mid-flight to avoid collisions. "Impossible!" Zira exclaimed. "How are they?" Elias stepped forward to the observation console, monitoring every move. "Observe," he said softly. "Notice how each human system anticipates slight variations, how they adjust immediately to conditions that would disrupt rigid algorithms. This is adaptability. This is Earth-origin intelligence." Zira's violet eyes narrowed. She signaled her drones to increase speed, attempting to regain control. The Vortan machines accelerated, moving faster, firing more frequently, trying to overwhelm human systems. But every maneuver was anticipated, every pattern countered. A small human drone, piloted by Lieutenant Mara, darted through the formation, creating a diversion. It was a minor move, almost playful, but it caused a chain reaction. Zira's drones hesitated for a split second, a hesitation amplified by the human's adaptive systems. That fraction of a moment was enough. Elias activated a secondary protocol, a sequence of subtle adjustments that no alien calculation could foresee. Shields shifted, weapons reoriented, drones recalculated trajectories. Every minor disruption compounded, magnifying the effect. Zira's precise systems began to falter. "Stop this!" Zira shouted, frustration breaking through her calm facade. "Cease the interference immediately. My systems cannot. They cannot," Elias observed quietly. He had learned long ago that arrogance was self-destructive when the underestimated fought back with intelligence. "Do not fear them," he said to his crew. "Fear clouds judgment. Observe, adapt, and respond. That is the human advantage." Zira's drones misfired repeatedly. Shields fluctuated, weapons overheated, and communications between units were delayed by unpredictable environmental variables introduced by humans. Her own control began to falter, and for the first time she felt vulnerability. Her lieutenant whispered cautiously, "Ambassador, perhaps we underestimated them. Perhaps they are stronger than we thought." Zira clenched her fists, refusing to admit it openly. "No," she said sharply. "Strength is not measured by flexibility alone. We are the Vortan Empire. Precision, calculation, order. These are what define us." Yet even as she spoke, the evidence told a different story. Human systems, though individually weaker, worked in harmony with unpredictability. They adapted faster, improvised solutions on the fly, and turned what should have been disadvantages into clear advantages. Every step of the demonstration revealed the limits of her superiority. Elias leaned back, quietly analyzing the results. "She does not understand yet," he murmured to Mara. "She sees power as a single measure, speed, size, firepower. But humans measure strength differently. It is not about dominating every move. It is about using what you have, adapting, and finding solutions where none seem possible. That is why she is losing control." Zira floated near her console, scanning the results frantically. Why can they do this? They should not." Elias activated a final sequence, designed to push the demonstration to its peak. Human systems began subtly influencing environmental energy fields, creating minor anomalies that disrupted Zira's drones without causing damage. The Vortan ships, which relied on precise calculations and predictable outcomes, struggled to adjust. Zira's voice rose in frustration. "Cease! Stop interfering! I command it!" Elias remained calm. "We are not interfering with destruction. We are demonstrating adaptation. You cannot predict it, you cannot control it, and yet it works." One by one, Zira's drones hesitated, misfired, and faltered. Her energy shields fluctuated under subtle shifts in power distribution. Her weapons recalculated endlessly, unable to lock onto fast-moving, unpredictable targets. And throughout it all, humans moved with quiet confidence, responding instantly to every change, turning the situation to their advantage. For the first time, Zira's arrogance was shaken. She had expected a simple demonstration of power, a chance to show humans their inferiority. Instead, she had watched her systems falter before ingenuity, creativity, and adaptability. Finally, she hovered in place, silent, her violet eyes studying Elias. "Humans, your species, it is remarkable." Elias smiled faintly. "It is not about being remarkable. It is about being adaptable. Strength is not always about dominance. Sometimes it is about observation, response, and intelligence." Zira's hands trembled slightly, an uncharacteristic reaction. For a being who valued control above all else, this was unsettling. She had underestimated humans, laughed at their limitations, and assumed superiority. Yet every assumption had been challenged and dismantled by ingenuity born of Earth itself. The docking bay fell silent, filled only with the hum of human systems functioning smoothly. Zira retreated, her pride intact on the surface but shaken within. She had learned, whether she admitted it or not, that humans were not to be dismissed. Elias turned to his crew. Today was not just about surviving a display. It was about showing that human ingenuity, adaptability, and creativity can overcome challenges that brute force cannot. Remember this, always. That is why humans endure and why we are not to be underestimated. Mara nodded, her eyes shining with pride. "Captain, she's never seen anything like this before." "No," Elias said softly, "and she will remember it, whether she admits it or not. Humans do not rely solely on strength. We rely on adaptability. We rely on observation. And most of all, we rely on the ability to turn every weakness into advantage. That is the lesson she will carry from this day." Zira, floating silently aboard her shuttle, glanced back at the station. Her systems were operational, her drones intact, but the lesson was clear. Humans, born from Earth's unpredictable origin, had an advantage that no amount of calculation, power, or arrogance could overcome. The stars outside shimmered, indifferent to alien pride or human determination. Yet, in the quiet of space, the real truth was evident. Humans had turned the tables. They had taken what seemed like a challenge and transformed it into proof that intelligence, adaptability, and creativity were just as powerful, if not more so, than brute force. And somewhere deep inside, Zira realized the truth. She had ridiculed the human, assumed superiority, and yet found herself outmaneuvered, not by power, but by the unexpected strength of a species shaped by its origin. The Vortan shuttle drifted silently through the void, its polished hull reflecting distant starlight. Zira sat in the command seat, her violet eyes fixed on the stars. For hours, she had reviewed the events at Horizon 1, analyzing every drone movement, every human adjustment, every subtle shift that had caused her precision systems to falter. At first, she had been angry. Anger had fueled her confidence, convincing her that humans were no more than weak creatures unworthy of attention. But now, that anger was replaced by a quieter, more unsettling realization. Humans were not weak. Back on the station, Captain Elias Carter walked among his crew, observing them as they returned to routine tasks. There was a sense of calm satisfaction in the air, a quiet pride that came from knowing they had not only survived a demonstration of alien superiority, but had subtly turned it into a lesson on human ingenuity. Lieutenant Mara approached Elias, her face reflecting the same thoughtful pride he felt. "Captain, they underestimated us completely. Zira, she must realize now that humans are not as predictable as she thought." Elias nodded slowly. "Perhaps. But understanding does not come easily for those who rely solely on calculations and rigid perfection. Humans have a way of adapting that cannot be anticipated. That is our advantage." Meanwhile, Zyra's mind returned again to the critical moment, the demonstration where her drones faltered, her shields fluctuated, and her precise systems failed to operate as planned. She had expected to showcase superiority, to humiliate humans, yet the outcome had been the opposite. "It is remarkable," she whispered to herself. Her hands rested lightly on the console, almost unconsciously. Not power, not speed, not size, but adaptability, creativity, and resilience. This is what they possess. This is why they survived when they should have failed. Her lieutenant observed quietly, aware that Zira's pride was struggling against a truth she could not ignore. "Ambassador, do you respect them now?" Zira's violet eyes flickered with a mixture of irritation and admiration. "Respect is not the word I would use, yet it is the closest I can come. They are formidable in ways my calculations cannot define. Perhaps that is enough for now." Back on Horizon 1, Elias had called a debrief for the senior crew. "What we witnessed today is more than a simple victory," he began. "It is a reminder of why humans endure, why we survive, and why we thrive. Our strength does not always come from brute force. It comes from adaptability, observation, and creativity. That is why Zyra's systems faltered, and that is why no species should underestimate us." The crew listened intently, absorbing every word. They had seen firsthand how humans had turned apparent weaknesses into advantages, how subtle shifts in strategy and environmental adaptation had disrupted superior alien technology. Elias continued, "Remember this lesson. Technology alone is not enough. Intelligence, creativity, and the ability to adapt are just as powerful, and sometimes even more so." Meanwhile, Zira floated silently in her shuttle, replaying every move the humans had made. Each adjustment, each improvisation had been precise yet unpredictable. She could not replicate it, and that realization unsettled her. She had underestimated not only the humans, but the force that had shaped them, their planet, their origin, the unpredictable energy of Earth itself. "They are not ordinary," Zira muttered. "The planet, Earth, has given them an advantage no machine can counter. That is why their systems worked, why they adapted, why they survived." Her lieutenant remained cautious. "Ambassador, perhaps you should reconsider your approach to humans. They may be unpredictable, but they are not reckless. Respect may be the wisest course." Zira's gaze softened, a small acknowledgement of the truth. "Yes, respect. Not yet admiration, but acknowledgement. Humans are not inferior, that much is clear." Back on the station, Elias walked to the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "They left believing in superiority," he said quietly to Mara. "But they will remember the lesson. Humans are not the species to mock. We endure, we adapt, and we find solutions where none seem possible. That is what makes us strong." Mara nodded. "Do you think Zira will come back?" Elias smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but she will no longer underestimate us. That is enough for now. The universe is vast, and there will always be challenges. But humans have a strength no alien calculation can measure: creativity, resilience, and adaptability. That is why we endure, and that is why we will always survive." Meanwhile, Zira's shuttle continued through space, slower now, as if she were taking time to absorb the full extent of what she had witnessed. For the first time in her career, she had encountered a species she could not dominate, a species that challenged her assumptions, and a species that forced her to confront the limits of her own pride. "They are extraordinary," she admitted softly. "Not because they are strong in the ways I expected, but because they are strong in ways I could not predict. That is, the lesson of humans. That is, the power of Earth's origin." Back on Horizon 1, the crew celebrated quietly. Not with loud fanfare, but with a sense of accomplishment and unity. They had demonstrated the true nature of humanity: ingenuity, adaptability, and the ability to turn disadvantage into advantage. They had survived ridicule and emerged stronger, a lesson not only for Zira, but for any who would underestimate humans in the future. Elias turned once more to the stars. "We have shown today that humans are not defined by what we lack, but by what we create, by how we adapt, how we think, and how we overcome challenges. That is the essence of our strength." And somewhere, far away in the Vortan Empire, Zira would carry the memory of that lesson. She had ridiculed the human, laughed at their limitations, and expected an easy victory. Instead, she had learned humility, respect, and a difficult truth: humans, shaped by their unpredictable origin, could achieve what no rigid calculation could anticipate. The universe remained vast and full of challenges, indifferent to species, empires, or pride. But humans had proven that strength was not always measured in raw power. It was measured in adaptability, creativity, and the ability to thrive in the unpredictable chaos of life. Zira's final thoughts before leaving the Orion sector were quiet, almost reflective. "Humans, they are not what I expected. They are formidable, and I will not forget it." On Horizon 1, the crew returned to their duties with a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced a superior alien species and emerged not only unscathed, but triumphant in the quiet, unmeasurable way humans often triumphed, through ingenuity, calm observation, and the clever use of what others overlooked. Elias watched the stars once more, feeling the quiet strength of his crew and the species they represented. "We endure," he whispered. "We adapt. We create. And no one, no matter how arrogant, can take that from us." And in that calm moment, the message was clear. The universe could underestimate humans, ridicule them, even mock their weaknesses, but humanity's true strength, born from Earth's unpredictable origin, could never be denied, controlled, or fully predicted. Humans had survived ridicule, outsmarted superior systems, and turned arrogance into a lesson. They had proven once again that adaptability, intelligence, and resilience were the greatest weapons of all. And Zira, for all her pride and confidence, would carry that lesson forward, silently acknowledging that humans, though seemingly ordinary, were extraordinary in ways no Vortan calculations could ever measure. The stars stretched endlessly around Horizon 1, indifferent yet witness to the quiet triumph of a species that had learned to thrive against all odds. And somewhere deep in the cosmos, the universe itself seemed to pause, recognizing that humanity had endured, adapted, and shone once again.